The galaxy had known order for over 3,000 years. Not peace was a luxury that sentient species could rarely afford, but order, structure, rules that governed how civilizations rose and fell, how wars were fought, how empires carved their territories from the endless void. The great powers had learned to coexist through careful balance. The hegemony controlled the core worlds with their bioengineered warrior castes. The consortium dominated trade routes through technological superiority. The Star Confederacy held the Outer Rim through sheer military might. Between them, dozens of smaller empires carved out their niches, each playing their part in the grand galactic theater. Wars were fought, certainly, planets changed hands, species rose and fell. But it was all done with a certain civility. Surrender was accepted. Prisoners were taken. Conquered populations were integrated, not exterminated. There were rules, ancient and unwritten, but universally understood. The galaxy was vast, but it was predictable. Then came first contact with Sol 3, Commander HFY of the Vorthic Imperium stood before the holographic display in his command chamber. His forearms folded behind his chitinous back. The blue-green world rotating slowly before him was unremarkable by galactic standards. A single star system in the outer spiral arm, far from any major trade routes or strategic resources. Initial scans complete, Commander reported his tactical officer. The planet shows signs of industrial civilization, but primitive. No faster-than-light capability detected, no energy shields. Their most advanced weapons appear to be chemical-based projectiles and crude atomic devices. HFY's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species, and their population, approximately 7 billion individuals of a single, dominant species, carbon-based bipeds. They appear to be divided into numerous competing nation-states, engaged in constant low-level warfare. Fascinating, the commander moved closer to the display. Studying the swirling clouds and continental masses, the Imperium's expansion has been slowing. Our young warriors grow soft with too much peace. Perhaps this world could serve as a training ground. His aide, a younger Vorthic with still bright Carapace markings, shifted nervously. Commander, the protocols regarding pre-FTL civilizations are guidelines, not laws. HFY interrupted. Besides, any species that survives to develop atomic weapons has proven its worthiness to join the galactic community. We would simply be accelerating their integration. The decision was made with casual indifference. The Vorthic had conquered hundreds of worlds over their long history. This would be just another entry in their chronicles, a brief training exercise for their newest generation of warriors before moving on to more challenging prey. They had no way of knowing that this decision would fundamentally alter the balance of galactic power forever. The Vorthic fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system with all the ceremony of a military parade. 50 vessels, each one a masterwork of engineering and destructive capability, arranged themselves in perfect formation as they began their approach to the third planet, on Earth. The first detection came from the Arecibo Radio Observatory. Dr. Sarah Chen was reviewing routine astronomical data when her screen erupted with energy signatures. That should have been impossible. She stared at the readings for a full minute before reaching for her phone with trembling hands. Within hours, every major government on Earth was an emergency session. The objects, clearly artificial, clearly massive, clearly not of human origin, were decelerating as they approached Earth. This was no asteroid impact or natural phenomenon. This was contact. World leaders scrambled to coordinate a response. The United Nations convened an emergency session. Military forces were placed on high alert. Scientists worked around the clock to analyze the incoming signals and prepare some form of communication protocol. None of it mattered. The Vorthic had not come to communicate. Commander HFY watched Earth grow larger on his displays with professional interest. His warriors filled the ship's combat decks, their weapons charged and ready. This would be quick, a demonstration of superior force followed by inevitable surrender. The primitives would submit, and the Imperium would gain another world for their expanding domain. The first bombardment began at precisely 0800 hours Greenwich Mean Time. The orbital strikes came without warning, without ultimatum, without any attempt at communication. Vorthic plasma lances reached down from the heavens like the wrath of ancient gods, turning cities to glass and ashen moments. London vanished in a pillar of superheated atmosphere. Tokyo simply ceased to exist. New York's towering skyline melted like a wax sculpture placed close to a flame. In the space of 3 hours, Human civilization's greatest achievements were reduced to smoking craters. But the Vortic weren't trying to destroy humanity merely to break their will to resist. Strategic strikes continued for days, targeting military installations, government centers, and major population hubs. Each assault was precisely calibrated to demonstrate the futility of resistance, while preserving the majority of the population for eventual integration into the Imperium. It was a strategy that had worked on hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Shock and awe followed by inevitable capitulation. The Vortic had not accounted for humanity's fundamental nature. In the ruins of former capitals, in the ashes of bombed-out cities, in the underground bunkers where the remnants of military forces had taken shelter, something unprecedented was happening. Instead of surrendering, instead of accepting their fate as countless other species had done, the humans were doing something the galaxy had not seen in millennia. They were adapting. Dr. James Morrison had been a mild-mannered professor of military history at West Point when the attacks began. Now, crouched in the ruins of what had once been the Pentagon, coordinating with surviving military units through jury-rigged communication systems. He was something else entirely. They're following standard conquest protocols, he explained to the assembled officers gathered around his makeshift command post. Maps and satellite imagery covered every available surface, marking Vortic positions and movement patterns. Shock, awe, demonstration of superiority. They expect us to surrender. General Patricia Hayes, her uniform torn and face streaked with ash, leaned forward. And when we don't, Morrison's eyes had taken on a cold gleam that would have been unrecognizable to his former students. Then they'll send ground forces to finish the job. They think they're fighting a conventional military force. They have no idea what we're becoming. Across the globe, the same realization was dawning on surviving human forces. This wasn't a war between armies, it was a war for species survival, and in such wars, there were no rules. The first Vortic ground assault began on the 7th day. After the initial bombardment, drop ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, carrying warriors eager for combat, expecting to face demoralized human forces armed with primitive weapons. What they found instead would haunt galactic military strategists. For generations to come, the humans were gone, not dead gone. The cities were empty, the military bases abandoned. The Vortic warriors found themselves occupying a ghost world, their thermal sensors picking up no significant life signs, their communications detecting no resistance signals. Then the attacks began. They came from everywhere and nowhere. Improvised explosive devices buried in roads, sniper fire from abandoned buildings, chemical weapons cobbled together from industrial supplies. The humans had vanished into their own world like antibodies dispersing through a bloodstream, and now they began their work. Captain Verthick led the 3rd Assault Legion through the ruins of what his intelligence reports called Washington, D.C. His warriors moved in perfect formation, their energy weapons at ready. But the city felt like a tomb. Empty vehicles littered the streets. Papers blew through abandoned government buildings. Nothing lived here. The explosion that killed half his squad came from beneath. Humans had turned the city's own infrastructure into a weapon. Before Verthick could coordinate a response, sniper fire began picking off his warriors from windows that should have been cleared, from angles that should have been impossible. His remaining troops took cover behind overturned vehicles. But the attacks came from new directions. The humans seemed to flow through their own ruined cities like water, appearing to strike and then vanishing before the Vortic could return fire. Command, this is 3rd Legion. Verthick spoke into his comm unit, his calm professional voice, betraying none of the unease he felt. Resistance is unconventional. Request backup and air support. The response crackled with static. 3rd Legion, be advised all ground units are reporting similar encounters. The primitives are not fighting according to standard patterns. Standard patterns. The phrase would become bitter irony in the months that followed. The humans had thrown away the standard patterns along with every other convention of civilized warfare. They fought like a virus, like a natural disaster, like something fundamentally outside the ordered galaxy's understanding of conflict. 3 months into the occupation, Commander X-High stood in his command chamber staring at casualty reports. That should have been impossible. His ground forces' elite warriors who had conquered a dozen worlds were being systematically destroyed by primitives armed with crude weapons and industrial chemicals. They don't fight like a military force, his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously. They fight like a plague. They're everywhere and nowhere. Our warriors can't engage them in proper combat because they won't stand and fight. Zexhai studied the reports with growing unease. Ambushes, sabotage, assassination, terror tactics the humans were employing every method of warfare that civilized species had abandoned eons ago. They targeted supply lines, communications, even individual warriors isolated from their units. They used their own dead as weapons, rigging corpses with explosives. They contaminated water supplies and food stores. Most disturbing of all, they were learning. Every Vorthic weapon captured was reverse engineered within days. Every tactical pattern the Imperium forces used was analyzed and countered. The humans absorbed knowledge like a sponge, adapting with frightening speed to each new challenge. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's unusual." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human figure seated in what appeared to be an underground bunker. The being was unremarkable by galactic standards, bipedal, carbon-based, physically weak. But there was something in its eyes that made Zexhai's Carapace prickle with instinctive alarm. "I am Dr. James Morrison," the human said, its voice calm and measured. "I believe we need to talk." The meeting took place in the ruins of New York, in what had once been the United Nations building. Commander Zexhai materialized via holographic projection, unwilling to risk his physical presence on the planet's surface. Dr. Morrison sat across from the flickering image, flanked by the other humans whose eyes held the same cold intensity. "You wanted to discuss terms of surrender?" Zexhai began, following standard protocols. Morrison's expression didn't change. "No, I wanted to discuss terms of your withdrawal." The Vorthic commander's mandibles clicked in amusement. "You seem to misunderstand your position. Your cities are in ruins. Your governments have fallen. Your military forces are scattered. You have no leverage for negotiations, don't we?" Morrison gestured, and the lights in the ruined building flickered. On cue, explosions bloomed across the city. Visible through the shattered windows, Vorthic installations, supply depots, communication rays. "That was 12 of your forward bases, destroyed simultaneously. We've been inside your command networks for weeks. We know where every one of your warriors is positioned." Zexhai's amusement faded. Simultaneous coordinated strikes across multiple targets suggested a level of organization and capability that contradicted every intelligence report. "About the primitive species you're learning about us," Morrison continued, his voice remaining eerily calm. "But we're learning about you too. Your weapons, your tactics, your technology. Every day we understand you better. Every day we become more dangerous." The human leaned forward, and Zexhai found himself unconsciously recoiling from the holographic projection. "Here's what's going to happen," Morrison said. "You're going to leave our world. You're going to leave our system. And you're going to tell the rest of the galaxy that Earth is off limits. And if we refuse?" Morrison's smile was colder than the vacuum between stars. "Then we'll keep learning. And eventually, we'll learn how to reach you." The negotiations collapsed within hours. Commander Zexhai, his pride stung by the primitive species' audacity, ordered a massive escalation. Orbital bombardment resumed with devastating intensity. The remaining human population centers were targeted for complete destruction. It was exactly the wrong decision. The renewed bombardment drove the surviving humans deeper underground, into bunkers and cave systems and subway tunnels that the Vorthic sensors couldn't penetrate. But it also did something else. It eliminated their last connection to the civilized galaxy's rules of warfare. Dr. Morrison, broadcasting from a bunker deep beneath the ruins of NORAD, addressed what remained of human civilization with words that would echo through galactic history. "They want to exterminate us." His voice crackled through jury-rigged communication systems, reaching every surviving human settlement. "They see us as animals to be culled or slaves to be broken. They offer no quarter, no mercy, no hope of survival through surrender." The transmission reached resistance cells from the Australian outback to the Siberian wastes, from the Amazon basin to the Sahara Desert. Humans who had never met, who spoke different languages, who had been enemies before the invasion, all heard the same message. "If they want to fight without rules," Morrison continued, "then we'll show them what that really means. We'll become something the galaxy has never seen. We'll become the thing they'll wish they'd never awakened." In hidden laboratories, human scientists worked feverishly to unlock the secrets of captured Vorthic technology. In underground factories, engineers converted mining equipment into weapons of war. In training camps carved from natural caves, former teachers and accountants and shopkeepers learned to kill with an efficiency that would have horrified their former selves. Humanity was evolving, driven by the single imperative that had shaped every successful species in the universe: survive at any cost. The captured Vorthic transport ship changed everything. The attack came 18 months after the initial invasion, striking a supply convoy moving between orbital platforms and ground installations. The humans had learned to coordinate their efforts across vast distances, turning Earth's entire surface into a single, unified weapon. Surface-to-orbit missiles improvised from captured alien technology disabled the escort vessels. Electromagnetic pulse weapons knocked out the transport's defensive systems. And then, impossibly, human fighters in crude but functional spacesuits swarmed the disabled vessel. Captain Vorthic, commanding the transport's defensive complement, expected the humans to destroy the ship as they had so many others. Instead, they boarded it. The battle that followed lasted 6 hours and became legendary among both species. The humans fought through the ship's corridors like demons, using their smaller size and intimate knowledge of the vessel's layout somehow acquired through months of intelligence gathering the devastating advantage. When the shooting stopped, every Vorthic aboard was dead, and for the first time since the invasion began, humans had captured an intact interstellar vessel. Dr. Morrison stood in the transport's command center, surrounded by the alien technology that would change the course of the war. Around him, human engineers and scientists swarmed over control panels and data banks, downloading every scrap of information they could find. "How long until we can fly this thing?" he asked the chief engineer, a former NASA technician named Sarah Kim. Kim looked up from a console covered in alien symbols, her face streaked with oil and determination. "Give me the weeks to understand their navigation systems. Give me a month to train a crew." Morrison nodded grimly. "You have both." The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's capacity for adaptation extended far beyond their own world. The human attack on Kepler Station came without warning. The orbital facility, positioned in the outer reaches of the Vorthic system, had stood for 3 centuries as a monument to imperial engineering. Its purpose was purely logistical: a transfer point for supplies and personnel moving between the Imperium's core worlds and their expanding frontier territories. It was also completely defenseless. The modified Vorthic transport, now crewed by humans and armed with weapons reverse-engineered from captured technology, materialized out of hyperspace like a ghost. Its signal transponders broadcast legitimate Imperial codes. Its approach vector followed standard traffic patterns. To the station's automated systems, it was just another routine supply run. The humans had learned well from their enemies. The first explosion took out the station's communications array, cutting it off from the rest of the Imperium. The second destroyed its defense grid. By the time the station's commander realized they were under attack, human boarding parties were already cutting through the outer hull. What followed was not a battle, it was an execution. The humans moved through the station with mechanical precision, their movements coordinated by combat algorithms learned from studying Vorthic tactical manuals. They took no prisoners, left no survivors, destroyed every piece of equipment they couldn't carry away. In the station's computer core, they downloaded terabytes of data, star charts, military deployments, industrial capabilities, population centers. The Vorthic had unwittingly provided their enemies with a complete intelligence breakdown of their entire civilization. When the attack was over, the humans loaded their captured supplies and vanished back into hyperspace, leaving behind only wreckage and a single message broadcasted on all Imperial frequencies. "You came to our world uninvited. You murdered our people without provocation. You showed us no mercy." The transmission was accompanied by video footage from Earth images of burning cities, of civilian casualties, of the orbital bombardment that had started the war. "Now we understand," the voice continued, cold and mechanical. "Now we know what you are, and we are coming." The Vorthic response was swift and overwhelming. Battle fleets were dispatched to patrol every major hyperspace route. Defensive installations were reinforced. Intelligence networks were activated to track down the human raiders. It wasn't enough. The humans had learned more than just technology from their enemies. They had learned patience, strategy, and the value of intelligence over brute force. They struck at isolated outposts, supply convoys, communication relays. Never anything large enough to justify a major military response, never in the same sector twice. Each attack yielded more intelligence, more captured equipment, more insights into Vortic capabilities and weaknesses. The humans were building a comprehensive understanding of their enemy's civilization. Piece by piece, target by target, Commanders HFY, now recalled from Earth to coordinate the response to the human raids, found himself facing a type of warfare he had never encountered. The humans didn't fight for territory or resources, they fought for knowledge and opportunity. Every engagement was a learning experience. Every captured facility a chance to understand their enemy better. They're not trying to conquer us, he reported to the Imperial High Command. They're studying us, learning our weaknesses, mapping our capabilities, understanding how we think and fight. The response from his superiors was predictable: find them and destroy them. But how do you destroy an enemy that refuses to be found? The humans had no fixed bases, no supply lines to attack, no territory to defend. They appeared from the void, struck their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. It was like fighting shadows. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: intercepted human communications. Vortic intelligence operatives working around the clock to decode human transmissions finally cracked one of their encrypted channels. What they found chilled the Imperial Command staff to their chitinous cores. The humans weren't just raiding Vortic facilities, they were preparing for something much larger. The intercepted messages revealed a level of organization and planning that contradicted every assumption about the primitive species. They had established hidden bases throughout the Outer Rim. They had been recruiting allies from species oppressed by the Imperium. Most disturbing of all, they had been conducting detailed surveillance of major Vortic worlds. They know everything about us, HFY reported to the High Command, his mandibles clicking with barely controlled panic. Population centers, industrial capabilities, defensive installations. They've been watching us for months, but the most terrifying revelation was yet to come. Deep in the intercepted data, Imperial cryptographers found something that sent shockwaves through the highest levels of Vortic leadership. Detailed technical specifications for weapons that didn't exist in any known arsenal. The humans weren't just learning to use captured Vortic technology, they were improving it. The first reports came from Vortic patrols operating in the Outer Rim, ships destroyed by weapons that exceeded known human capabilities, energy signatures that suggested advances beyond anything in the Imperial arsenal. Most disturbing of all, records that showed signs of technology that incorporated both human and Vortic engineering principles. Dr. Morrison, now operating from a mobile command center aboard a heavily modified human vessel, reviewed the latest intelligence reports with satisfaction. Around him, the ship's corridors buzzed with activity as human engineers worked alongside captured Vortic equipment, creating hybrid technologies that neither species could have developed alone. Status report, he ordered, settling into his command chair. Sirakim, now his chief of operations, approached with a data pad. The new plasma cannons are ready for field testing. Range and penetration are both 30% better than standard Vortic weapons. The hybrid armor plating should provide better protection against their energy weapons. Morrison nodded. And our allies, the Zolani Rebellion, is moving ahead of schedule. The Krugan Resistance has secured 3 major industrial systems. The former Imperium colonies are providing more volunteers that we can process. It had been an unexpected development, the discovery that the Vortic Imperium's expansion had created enemies throughout the galaxy, species conquered and oppressed, worlds stripped of resources, populations enslaved or exterminated. The humans' war of vengeance had resonated with dozens of other civilizations, but unlike previous rebellions, this one was coordinated, organized, and armed with technology that the Imperium couldn't counter. What about our primary target? Morrison asked. Kim's expression grew grim. Vortic Prime is heavily defended, but we've identified weaknesses in their orbital platforms. The civilian population is concentrated in 12 major cities. If we can neutralize their defense grid, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Both of them understood what came next. The attack on Vortic Prime was planned with the meticulous care of a surgical operation and the ruthless efficiency of a natural disaster. Human forces, now numbering in the hundreds of ships and supported by allies from across the galaxy, struck simultaneously at 17 different targets throughout the Vortic system. Defense platforms, orbital installations, communication arrays, supply depots, all were hit within a coordinated time frame that left the Imperial forces reeling. But the primary assault was reserved for the homeworld itself. Commander X-High, stood in the command center of the Planetary Defense Network, watching his screens fill with incoming contacts. The humans had learned well from their time as victims. They offered no warning, no ultimatum, no chance for surrender. All defense grids, engage at will, he ordered, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the assault. Around him, Vorthik, officers worked frantically to coordinate their response. The battle that followed lit up the system like a new star. Human ships, now armed with weapons that exceeded Imperial specifications, tore through defensive formations with devastating effectiveness. Vorthik vessels that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries found themselves outmatched by opponents they had once dismissed as primitives. But the most shocking revelation came when the human ground assault began. The beings that descended from the sky bore little resemblance to the soft, weak creatures that the Vorthik had first encountered on Earth. These humans moved with mechanical precision, their weapons and tactics honed by years of desperate warfare. They fought not for conquest or glory, but with the cold efficiency of exterminators. City after city fell with terrifying speed. The Vorthik military, trained for conventional warfare against civilized opponents, found themselves completely unprepared for enemies who followed no rules, showed no mercy, and gave no quarter. The silence that followed the fall of Vorthik Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had experienced in recorded history. Dr. Morrison stood in the ruins of the Imperial Palace, surrounded by the ashes of a civilization that had once ruled dozens of star systems. Around him, human forces methodically dismantled what remained of the Vorthik infrastructure, downloading data, cataloging resources, and preparing for whatever came next. The transformation was complete. The mild-mannered professor who had once taught military history to cadets at West Point was gone, replaced by something that the galaxy would struggle to classify. Not quite human in the old sense, but not alien either. Something new, something dangerous. Status report, he ordered, his voice carrying across the communication networks that now link human forces throughout the galaxy. The responses came from dozens of worlds, hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers who had once been teachers and farmers and shopkeepers. The Vorthik Imperium was finished, not conquered, not occupied, but eradicated. Their world stood empty, their fleets reduced to debris, their people extinct. It had taken less than 5 years. "What are your orders?" Sir asked Sarakim, now bearing the scars of a dozen battles and the cold efficiency of a born killer. Morrison considered the question, staring out at the stars that had once seemed so distant and now felt like stepping stones. Somewhere out there, other civilizations watched and waited, wondering if humanity would be satisfied with the destruction of their first enemy. The answer was already spreading across the galactic communication networks, a single transmission that reached every inhabited world, every space station, every ship traveling between the stars. "We are watching." The galaxy learned to live with silence. Trade routes that had bustled with commerce for millennia grew quiet as ships avoided any system that might draw human attention. The great empires that had once competed for dominance now focused their energy on avoiding notice, their fleets hidden behind defensive screens, their civilizations trying to make themselves invisible. In the void between stars, human vessels moved like ghosts, appearing at the edge of sensor range before vanishing into the darkness. They made no demands, issued no ultimatums, conquered no new worlds. They simply existed, a constant reminder that the galaxy's balance of power had fundamentally shifted. The old order was dead, killed in the furnaces of Earth's orbital bombardment and reborn in the ashes of Vorthik Prime. What had emerged was something new, something that didn't fit the established patterns of galactic civilization. The humans had learned the galaxy's most important lesson, that survival belonged to the most adaptable, the most ruthless, the most willing to abandon the comfortable constraints of civilization when extinction was the alternative. And now, in the endless darkness between stars, they watched and waited. The species that had once dreamed of joining the galactic community had instead become its apex predator, transformed by fire and fury into something that would reshape the nature of interstellar relations forever. The galaxy had wanted to know what humanity was capable of. Now it knew. And in the silence between stars, in the darkness where human ships waited like patient spiders, the answer echoed through every transmission, every whispered conversation, every fearful glance at the night sky. Anything, everything, whatever it took to survive. The age of order was over. The age of watching had begun. And humanity changed, evolved. transformed by the crucible of near extinction, would never again be underestimated. The universe had taught them that they were not alone. In return, humanity had taught the universe the true meaning of fear.